of mind for college prep programs with our two AVID presenters. Kathy Arno is a program manager for AVID Center. She currently manages a grant to expand AVID in Central Texas, which will also develop their math and science curriculum materials. Her prior positions include Advanced Academics Coordinator, AVID Director and Science Coordinator for McKinney ISD, after teaching AP Chemistry for many years. During her years as an AP teacher, she also served as a College Board chemistry consultant and an AP Chemistry reader. Barbara Copeland is the Central Division Program Manager for AVID Center, whose responsibilities include creating and facilitating professional development for teachers and administrators. Before joining AVID, she taught in the public school system for 21 years, with the last assignment in Albany ISD as AVID District Director, Site Coordinator, and AVID Elective Teacher. Let's give these two ladies a warm welcome.
Now, who do you think was the chemistry teacher? Barbara or Kathy? What a question.
Of course, what she's saying.
I was thinking if she was reading that it was a number of years ago. I've got to remember somebody's recording this. I got to talk into the microphone. That my husband and daughter and I had gone to a pie restaurant after church or something, and in a town that was about 15 miles where I was teaching there in McKinney IC. And the young waiter came up and he said, "Are you a teacher?" And I said, "Well, yes. Did you go to McKinney High School?" And he said, "No, you just look like a teacher." And I thought, well, not sure what that's all about, but okay, I'll have to accept that. Hey, we're really glad that you came today. How many of you have AVID in your schools? How many of you don't know anything about AVID? Hey, good. Well, Barbara, we've got a good audience here to introduce to AVID. We are really glad to have you here. What we're going to be talking today is about habits of mind for college prep. And everything that Dr. McGahee said this morning about Connolly's 4 keys led right into our presentation. So as we talk about this today, you'll think, oh yeah, she was talking about that this morning. So you will have a connection there, and you've got the PowerPoint for that, and then of course you'll have the PowerPoint for here. So if you didn't get a handout earlier, they will be coming for us. For those of you that aren't familiar with AVID at all, we have what we call the AVID College Readiness System. AVID actually started in that center little circle there where it says secondary and the AVID elective. Started 31 years ago with one person saying, I have a group of kids that need to be able to access the advanced classes, and they need a support system. And these were non-traditional kids. They were kids that were low income, that had moved into a very affluent high school because of rezoning, and the AP teachers basically said, you know, these kids can't do it, and so therefore they should not be in our class. And she took it upon herself to make that happen for those kids. And at that time, she called the program AVID, which stands for Advancement via Individual Determination. It's all about the kids, in other words. It's not about us doing the work, it's about the kids doing the work. So we started there with the AVID elective in the secondary program, where there's a class, and in that class they have a curriculum, and that curriculum has particular components that we'll talk about, including a tutorial program, and then it expanded into a school-wide system. Now we have an elementary component of AVID, and the elementary component is not a class, it's an embedding of strategies throughout the entire, it can be 4th, 5th, and 6th grade program, so that they learn the college readiness skills at a very early age, and so they have them to travel with them from middle to high school. And now we have a post-secondary program, and the post-secondary looks very much like that AVID elective in the secondary, in that, yes, the kids are chosen for those who have the capability of doing very well, but they need a support system. They need somebody to, in a way, sort of intervene for them, hold their hand, provide the tutorials, check on their grades, provide them with the knowledge of how to navigate the system, etc. And I think we're in 25 universities now, and so that's a very, very new program and growing dramatically. On this slide, what you'll see here is, again, the comparison of prepared versus ready. Now, Dr. McGahee also mentioned this morning eligibility, which I actually think is a better word. What's the difference in being eligible for college and being ready for college? So if you look at the little oval here in the middle, college preparedness, think about that as college eligibility. What do you have to do to get there? Well, you have to take the right courses. And in Texas, we have the 4x4. You got to take all these courses, and then we're going to call you eligible for college. Well, you are eligible. Are you ready? Maybe or maybe not. So it's taking the right courses, it's applying to a college, it is applying for financial aid. But there's a bigger picture, and that bigger picture is the college readiness. What are those habits of mind, the soft skills, the unspoken prerequisites that kids need in order to be able to not only get to college, but be successful and stay there? And everybody's seen the statistics that say a lot of kids go to college that don't ever come out the other end of that system. And they don't have, for lots of different reasons, they have to drop out. But much of the time it is that they're not truly, truly ready for the rigor that's there. So think about that as eligibility versus college readiness. And another piece of that, excuse me, taking notes, writing, and studying, these are hallmarks of the AVID program. Teaching kids how to do these things that do play into their being able to be successful. Self-advocacy, which is a very big point for the kids who are underrepresented in college. Do they know how to approach their teacher when they're having trouble? Do they have that strength of presence to go to a college professor and say, I need help, can you help me? Or to form a study group. Do they know how to do that? Well, that's part of the program of AVID. The inquisitiveness. Do they know how to inquire, how to ask questions? So these are part of the points that we'll talk about today. This slide, and I won't read it to you, but it's along the same lines as that Dr. Galati used this morning and Dr. McGahey used, of that pipeline. The pipeline, it gets more restrictive and more restrictive as we go through the different grade levels. And this really is talking about an economic impact of the kids not being able to finish college. Well, number one, we know that a lot of kids have to go to remedial programs in college. That's going to take time. It's going to take money. If they have to get loans, then that sets them in a way even further back. But it's bigger than that. It's really down all the way to the bottom. Local and state revenue. It's an economic impact for our nation, for our state, for our communities, that if we don't educate our kids to have better paying jobs, then we have actually failed them in a way. Oh, let's see, I was going to ask you a question here. I want you to share with this question and the answers with a partner in just a moment. What is the biggest hurdle that students face in being college ready, and how can we help them get past that hurdle? And I want you to think about it real briefly and talk with somebody in the row behind you or beside you. What are the biggest hurdles that the kids face, and how can we help them with those hurdles? So take about 1 minute, real quickly. I'll be fast.
Laboratory loop road, corner of the carriage.
All right, can we draw our attention back this way? And I know that's not near enough time for you to get a decent discussion going, but several of you. This part of the room, share something that you talked about, hurdles and how we can overcome them. Study habits, excellent. Another one from this group.
Foundation.
Basic skills. Okay. Up the top right. Yes.
I'll tell you, every college entrance person that I talk to that's got critical thinking and problem solving, very young. That if their kids, they say to us that if the kids come to them with problem solving and critical thinking skills, they can do the rest.
Well, and again, that was part of the discussion this morning. It's not, most people are not going to go into one career and stay there. So how do we teach our students to be adaptable? Yeah, how to think. Absolutely. Over here.
Writing.
Oh, yeah. Writing what? A little bit of anything, but structured writing and writing to learn, absolutely. And the bottom area here. Reading.
And comprehension.
Reading and comprehension. So we have to help our students learn how to comprehend what they're reading. And I don't want to show of hands, but as we think about that, how many of us really teach our students how to read? Because we think by the time they get to high school, they know how to do it. Do we teach them to read and how to digest a reading passage and pick out the key elements of it, to interact with that? That's something that Barbara will talk about here in a little bit, so I won't belabor that right now. Very, very critical skills. These quotes came from an article that Mary Catherine Swanson wrote. Mary Catherine Swanson is a person who started AVID in 1980, but a very, very, very good article. And at the time she wrote this, 2005, we were really thinking college prep. We, meaning everybody, was thinking college prep versus what's the difference between getting there and staying there. So college prep really is, she's talking about college readiness in this point. College prep is now success prep. If our kids don't choose to go to college, if they don't make it through college, they still have to be prepared for the societal expectations of them in terms of jobs. Are they going to be able to make it in a technological world, or in a world where they have to measure and multiply and divide and read and interpret and read the instruction manual and the technical manuals? Some of the prerequisites for college work are obvious. Take the right course. Apply for college. But college prep's most important prerequisites are unspoken. The things that they need that are not just the content. Successful college prep for all recognize that students are coming to you with different academic and curricular backgrounds. We have to bridge the gap between what they already know, can do in their habits, and what we assume. I know that back in, early 90s, when my district began to really push AP, and at that time we only had a couple of AP courses and we expanded that dramatically, there was a huge amount of discussion about whether or not we allowed open access to our AP. And there were many who said no, because this is a college level class and the kids need to come to me prepared for college level work. And ultimately we did prevail in having an open access to that. Now, did that solve the problem? Only partially, because some of the kids did not still access that open access. They didn't feel like that was for them. So there were a lot of things that we had to do with our methods and our assumptions in order to break down that barrier for the kids. I'm not going to read this to you, but do read this real quickly. Yes.
We're talking about, as opposed to like reading or math, or all those skills are very important, but access in general, and not just, as you mentioned, not just access to the class, but teaching students how to access that information and access those skills in general in order to do that, not regardless of what their intentions are when they leave the class. We want them to be ready for college, and it seems like that access and teaching people how to. I've been in schools and was once a teacher that believed in the very beginning when I started teaching that they should come to me that way. And I learned very quickly that that was unrealistic and that students were failing because I was not doing my part to give them access.
Absolutely. Telling is not teaching, and being delivered information is not necessarily learning. And so we have got to change our practices, and that's really where AVID is looking at how do we impact not only that AVID class, but the school to account for non-traditional college prep students' needs. So to take a look at this, if these characteristics are important and they are learned behaviors, you're not born with them, how do high school students get them? Well, they may have come up through the system where they had an excellent elementary and middle school program. Wonderful. They may have had a family environment where their parents read to the students or to their children. They took them to museums. They had big family discussions at the dinner table besides movies or whatever. So their family environment promoted those things. And if those are not in place, then we have to take deliberate steps. And that's really where we are. Because we have a large population in Texas and in every school where kids don't come to us with the backgrounds we wish that they had. So we have to intervene for them. That's part of our moral imperative as educators. Changing of the guard here.
The non-chemistry teacher. Well, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Got to get you a little pepped up there. Academic rigor. You can read this, but basically you've heard it time and time again. And as soon as, or as the latest time that I've seen it, was last week in the Ed Week. How many of you get the Ed Week? I get them every day. I get a little notice from Ed Week. So even last week, they talked about the biggest predictor for college readiness is the intensity of high school. What classes did they take? How well did they do in those classes? It's not so much about the GPA only, but did they actually take that AP test at the end of the class? How intense, how rigorous? Now, at Avid, you can't come into Avid unless you agree to take rigorous classes. Write this down somewhere, all right? Avid only exists to support the students in rigorous classes. It's not about Avid, although I'll tell you, Avid itself is a rigorous class. It was designed that way. There are, in an Avid week, we have 2 days are just curriculum, 2 days that we do with tutorials, and then 1 day is a motivational day. So we work for 4 out of the 5 days to make sure that our students are successful in their classes of rigor. Because we can't put these who have not been on that track before, in those classes before, into these rigorous classes and say, hey, you're an Avid, buddy, good luck. We explicitly teach those things that Kathy was talking about. So how do we do that? We do it through WICOR. Okay, so my Avid people, what's different? The organization. Do you do organization in Avid? You bet you do. Because all successful people are organized. Now, we've had WICOR, what we called WICOR, W-I-C-R, for quite a while. Writing to Learn. We explicitly teach kids how to write and the different purposes for that writing. We're looking at different modes. Inquiry. How do we ask those questions? How do we become self-motivators? How do we become knowledgeable about what we know and what we don't know, what we can ask questions about? Hey, how about challenging what we're hearing in classes? Don't you like students to challenge you? Sure, come on, you know you do. Collaboration. How many of you worked in study groups in college? You formed study groups. Did you have any formal knowledge about how to form those groups, or you just said, hey, what are you doing later? You want to get together and look this over? Right? That's how we did it. So collaboration. We teach our kids cooperative learning, but then we really teach them how to collaborate. Organization already touched on, and then reading to learn. I like the fact that you said writing, and as soon as she said writing, you said reading. I didn't hear any math. You know what the old saying is, right? Math gets you into college, reading and writing keep you there. You heard that one? If I would have known that one, I probably wouldn't have gone to college. The only class I ever cried in, that math class. All right, so inquiry. Let's think about inquiry. How many of you know Costas? In Avid, we use Costas' level of thinking because there are only 3 levels. But do these 3 levels get our kids doing what we need them to do? Sure they do. I told this story just before, and I was doing a workshop in Missouri, in St. Louis, Missouri. And they raised their hand because I was talking about Costas, and they said, hey, Barb, we don't do Costas in Missouri. I said, really? What do you do? They said, we have our own. Costas doesn't go high enough for Missouri. Really? What's higher than hypothesizing? They have 7 levels in Missouri. I said, really? Show me your top level. Showed me the top level. Anybody want to guess what was in their top level? Look at level number 3. So we use this with our AVID students because we want to teach them what the levels of questions are. We want them to challenge what they're learning in class. If I've got a teacher that's giving all level 1 and the student's the one that says, Mr. Thomas, I notice in your class that you're just asking us level 1 questions. What's that mean for Mr. Thomas? Look, I'll tell you, Mr. Thomas is going to come down to Barbara Copeland's room, the AVID teacher, and say, what are you teaching your kids? They're telling me only level 1 questions. And when I tell him what a level 1 question is, then what's the next step? Offended? Or maybe thinking about the practices, because our kids need to be challenged. So if you look at level 1, it's on the page or it's in the book. I can find the answer all by myself. Then to go to level 2, there's some processing. Yeah, part of the answer might be there on the page or in the book, but I really have to engage my brain. Students don't always come in with a great level 1 knowledge base. So we've got to get them there, but that's not enough. What was it you said? Who was it that said that about if we can get them thinking, critical thinking and problem solving? We've got to be able to move up. Our AVID students, we do that. It's an explicitly taught thing. So if I go into your building, and I don't care who I'm talking about here, anybody's building, is this what I see when I open up your student's notebook at their notes? Sure it is. I see notes, right? What's missing? Maybe the format, maybe all of those different interactions. We call these quality repetitions. And I'm going to talk to you about Cornell Notes in just a minute. But what I really want to call your attention to is this is where the student has been taught to go back into the notes and question. Question, what am I learning? What do I know? What do I think I'm going to be tested about? What is it that's key? What's important? And then they create these questions over here on the left side. We teach them to question because if we can get them questioning, then we've won part of the battle. All right. If you have a packet, if you look on the back, you've got some pieces of paper. It's the Cornell Note format. It's the template. Ooh, I'm going to take these and I'm going to copy them from my building. I know how educators work. But if you don't have that, then just a little sheet of paper. I want you to jot down a few ideas. I want you to think about it. How and when did you learn to take notes? Just jot down a few things. Don't share yet. Don't share yet. When she's talking about notes, is she talking about like somebody teaching us? Turn with your partner and talk about your wonderful learning of notes sensation that I'm sure that you had. Go ahead, talk.
Back in the day, they'll do everything to highlight. This is sad.
We are the world. Okay, so if I walked around and I looked at your sheet of paper, how many of you had a blank sheet? Or it has, nobody taught me how to take notes. What are you doing here? You should have been a failure at college. Nobody taught you how to take notes. Just by show of hands, how many of you were taught the outlining format and you use that religiously? Okay, maybe that was the only time you were ever taught to take notes. Okay, so how many of you were more like Barbara Copeland, and that is, they said take notes, and oh, I took notes. What's this? I can write. I can take, in fact, I can almost take everything you say down on a sheet of paper, right? Any of those in here? Okay. And then I have some others that I can jot down a few things, and when I got home, I said, I don't know what this means. Any of those in here? Statistically, you shouldn't have made it through college. But you could take your right hand and you could point it to the ceiling and then bend it and pat yourself on the back because you all are college graduates and you are the success stories. How many of those kids that we talked about earlier that dropped out because they got to college and they don't know how to do college? They don't know how to take notes. And now I don't have someone saying, you know what? You really need to put this down. Okay, write this down. How many times have you said that in a class? Or said, now this is going to be important. Or one of the things we teach the kids is that they watch teachers, you know? And every time that Miss Skates comes to this side and she says something, it's going to be in a test. And if she walks over here, I'm not writing that down, but if she goes back to her spot, you better take that note. Okay. So we looked at that page of notes because that is what we teach our kids. It's the Cornell way. Now, I would like to say that Avid invented this. However, we did not. Walter Pock did in 1949 at Cornell University, hence Cornell Notes. However, what Avid's really good at doing is finding something, it's got research behind it, it works, and what we do then is we make it better. Geez. I love things where I can make a word and each letter stands for something. Avid. All right. So Walter Pock wrote him a letter. He's 90-something years old now, but there is a regional director in California that wrote him a letter and said, Mr. Pock, you know what? We have all of our kids taking Cornell Notes, and they're still not doing as well as we thought they should. What do you think the problem is? Walter Pock wrote back and said, they're doing note-taking, which means, and those of you in Avid schools, I'll challenge you, I bet you see this, where it looks like Cornell Notes, they put the T, my kids used to call it teeing it up. They put the T on there, they put their essential question, they write stuff down over here, and they might put a word or two on the left side, and they make it look real pretty. Can I hear an amen out there? It looks organized. But what Walter Pock said is that they're not taking it the next step. And in Avid, we take it the next step. When students leave Avid, they know how to take notes. They know how to revise, go back in. What is it I should be learning out of this? Hey, you know what? With this exchanging of ideas, I want my students to take the notes and compare them. What is it you have that I don't have? Well, why'd you write that down? Ooh, do you think that's really important? Right? We want them to exchange the ideas. We want them to link the learning. We want a summary for that page of notes. We want them to look at it, chunk the information. Oh, this is important. This is maybe a question over this chunk is going to be, and I'm going to write that in the left side. Goes back to inquiry and questioning what's on that page of notes. And then I'm going to use all of my answers to my questions because I now know them because I have these quality repetitions with my notes, and it looks like, oops, too far. This one, see, now here's the format, and it looks organized, right? And then we go into making the notes, which is I'm going to highlight, maybe I've got some vocabulary words, maybe I need more explanation. I'm going to put that in red so I can go back and talk to my teacher. And if you'll notice, I kind of have it chunked so that each one of those I'm going to ask a question, and then my learning link is I'm going to answer my essential question. That's my first sentence down here. Kind of cool. Those of you that teach summary, this is really good. So the first sentence is the answer to my essential question, and then each other sentence is the answer to the question that I thought I was going to be tested about, and that's what that page of notes is about. Sounds simple, right? If you don't hold them accountable and tell them that this is where it is, this is really the power of the Cornell way. It's when they go back in and they get these quality interactions with the notes. It goes to the 10-24-7. What am I talking about?
Brain theory.
It's the brain theory. So 10 minutes after I finish getting these notes, I'm going to go back and I'm going to have an interaction. Maybe I'm going to check with somebody else. Say, hey, what'd you get? What'd you get? Okay. Then within 24 hours, I have to go back into those notes and get another interaction, another repetition. Maybe that's where I go in and I highlight, or maybe that's where I revise, or maybe that's where I chunk my information. Within 7 days, I want to make sure I go back into the notes. And you know Ebbinghaus's theory of forgetting, right? The curve of forgetting, which says, if once I get the information, if I don't have any other interactions, then I lose the information. 10-24-7 says, well, I got the information as I start dipping, whoops, there I go, I'm going back up, right? And as I start dipping, whoop, there I go up. And instead of my forgetting going all the way here, now the curve of forgetting is much higher. This works for that. All right. Kath?
Yeah. Remember, what we're talking about here is habits of mind and soft skills and hidden prerequisites or unspoken prerequisites. So do you see in those Cornell notes, go back to here, do you see that that would be incredibly helpful to your kids? Yeah, I sure hope so, because they are very powerful. Let's look at another way that we can use these, or look at these habits of mind, and that's with a Socratic seminar. Now, what does Socratic mean? Yes?
Open discussion.
It refers to an open discussion, and what else about Socratic? Yeah, with questioning. With questioning. So a Socratic seminar is something that we really emphasize with AVID, because not that that is the be-all, end-all, but what we want to do is do these particular things. We want them to talk about ideas, dilemmas, develop vocabulary, listening skills, etc. So when the Socratic seminar is set up, kids are typically given a reading passage to digest. There they've got to mark critical vocabulary, important phrases, link them together, write in the margin, and then they go into a Socratic seminar where there is a leading question that's presented, and then the students will back and forth do a discussion. You know, sort of like Bill O'Reilly and those people. No, that's a joke. That's a joke. Not like them. Not like them at all. Because this is a structured discourse. It is a dialogue, which is not what they are exposed to on TV. This is a matter of discussing an important topic and then the give and take, so that whatever comment you make, you have got to support it by referring to the reading, and then you support it with facts, and then the other person responds to your particular comments. So it's definitely a very much structured, reasoned dialogue for the kids, but that's at the heart of rigor. So as we think about habits of mind, of what we've already talked about so far, and we're not through by any means, what habit of mind do you see, would you put a one-word description of? Or at least what I think is the one-word description. What's going on in all these things with the Cornell Notes, with the organization, with the Socratic seminar? You know, there's no right or wrong, because I'm sure they all apply. It has to do with the brain, I heard that. I think it's about thinking. I think it's about thinking here. And that's what we want the kids to do. And so when Barbara showed you that cost us 3 levels, that bottom one is not much thinking at all. It's a matter of going to the book and finding the answers. That's not thinking. Thinking is applying, synthesizing, analyzing, comparing, contrasting, etc. Another way that AVID promotes these particular skills is with our tutorials. And we think, or used to think, those of you that were in AVID, that a tutorial was get a group of kids together and they've got a problem on homework, they come together, they talk with each other and with the teacher, and we help them find the answer. AVID tutorials are not about finding the answer. They're about the process. So here the students will look at their homework, their assignment, and come to the class twice a week with a question that they have written that relates to their point of confusion. So as they have looked at what's giving them trouble, they have to analyze it to come to the point, where is it I got stuck on this? I can't go any further. The point of confusion. Write a question then about that point. Bring it to the class, and in the group, small group tutoring, pardon me, then that person presents his question, stands up at the board. all the rest of the people are not writing down just the notes, they're asking the presenter questions to help that presenter learn how to solve the problems. It's about the process. It's not about the answer. The answer is good, but it's about teaching a student how to ask their own questions to get to the end of whatever it is they need, their problem solving. So they're pushing each other's thinking. The tutor's present, and they facilitate it, but the tutor is not supplying the answer. Big difference. When I mentioned in one of those first slides about AVID now having a post-secondary program, they're taught this tutorial method. Because again, it doesn't help just to get them to the answer. You have got to help them figure out what are your steps, what are your thinking processes that get you to that answer. That's much more valuable. And then at the end of the tutorial process, they have to reflect on their learning. So they have got to engage their brain again. How did I learn this? What were the processes that I used? Not just summarize what we did. What are the processes, my thinking, that brought me to that point?
Okay, so as we go through this, I really want you to think about the 4 keys. You know what I'm talking about? Your house key? No. There are 4 keys, which, according to Conley, the 4 keys for college readiness, you have the key of content knowledge, okay? You have the key to cognitive strategies. Have you heard any cognitive strategies yet? Maybe 1, maybe 2. Hey, don't move my stuff, lady. All right. 3 is the key to learning skills and techniques. Learning skills and techniques, all right? And then the last one, key transition knowledge and skills. How do you take what you're doing now and transfer it to college? How do you get those partnerships with colleges? How do kids know exactly what's expected? So keep those in mind as we go through these next few. Organization, we kind of already talked about it, but let's see, I'm going to pick on somebody. And I know Susan, so I'm going to pick on you. Susan, and if you don't know this answer, then, all right. So, Susan, where do you keep up with your daily activities? Where do you do that?
On my planner.
On your planner. Do you have a planner that you carry with you, or is it your phone?
I carry mine with me.
Ooh, that wouldn't have been that's a great answer. How many of you keep everything, your life as your phone? Oh, be honest, if you lost that, you'd lose contacts. If you want to know what you're doing next week, better look in the planner, right? Well, that's because you're successful. How many people do you know? Think about a student who doesn't know even when the next class is. Oh, no. So if we can get them thinking about, number 1, where's my stuff? Where's your homework? I don't know, miss. I did it, miss, right? I got it somewhere. All right. But if we can get them with an organized binder, working with an agenda where somebody's actually checking up on them, and then graphic organizers, because we start them off, but eventually it needs to be useful for them, right? All right, then more skills needed beyond academic. Goals. Goals. When are students taught how to write goals? When are they taught how to set goals? Look, here's a challenge. Go to any middle school student right now and say, where do you want to go to college? Chances are, you're going to get an answer? Oh yeah, I'm going to, and right now the answer would be, I'm going to University of Houston. Why? Yeah, even though they did just lose, that's okay. But they were undefeated, right? I want to go there. So then what we do is say, okay, that's your goal. What are you doing? Remember, this is middle school. Now. What are you? That's going to get you there. I got a shirt, right? But we teach them backwards mapping because there's no way that someone can get into engineering at Texas A&M University if in middle school they're not pushing themselves to take algebra. There's no way. So if I know I want to be an engineer at Texas, I want to go to Texas A&M because they have the absolute best engineering school, and I don't know that, here I'm at Rice, hello. If I want to go to Rice, ooh, I've got some things I better do, right? So we teach them to backwards map, but they've got to be able to set long-term and short-term goals. How do you really prioritize and know that you can't watch TV tonight? Now, this is what we do in AVID. The last 2 years, it's a huge, huge project that we do. Because when we went to university professors and said, what does the kids need? And I heard they need to be able to critically think, right? So, analyzing a prompt, what is it they're asking us to do? Why do we read? What are you going to read according to that prompt, And then focus note-taking according to the prompt. What are some of the notes I might want to take? And then how do I integrate my sources into what I'm writing? Don't you wish you had that when you got out of high school? But nice, huh? Critical reading. That one little thing up there where it says reading is a process. It is a process. Highlighting information is not coloring. We teach the kids that. Why am I reading? What am I reading for? What can I do with this reading? Why is it important? What is it about it? Now, here's what I want you to do, because I see some of those eyes out there, or I don't see eyes in some cases. I want you to stand up, and I want you to turn to someone either behind you or in front of you, which means you wouldn't be turning, you'd let them turn to you. Don't do this. Okay? And what I want you to do, the soft skills we just talked about. Talk about what you're doing in your schools that are really well and what you need help with. Talk. Go ahead, stand up, because the brain needs to work after lunch. Get it going. Talk to somebody you don't know. Okay, so I'm going to have them do this for like a minute or two, and then let's just hit.
We need to skip that.
Like this? Mm-hmm. And just get to this?
Yeah, I think so. Because we talk all around this. To a close. And have a seat, please. Did I have anybody that said, we do it all? What, no super people? Superman? How about if we add just a couple more to your conversation? Positive peer interactions. When you went to college, what's the first thing you did? You found friends, right? Did you find the ones that dropped out after the first semester? If you had those friends, what'd you do with them? Kick them to the curb. Self-advocacy. Kathy talked about that, but really our AVID kids, or kids in general, all kids need to be able to speak up for themselves and to question. And if they don't feel like something's gone right, or if they need help on something, they need to feel the empowerment themselves to go ahead and do and get through. Slant. What's slant?
Lean forward, ask questions, nod your head, talk.
Yeah, so you all heard that. Just in case you didn't, I'll go ahead and reset it. Sit at the front. Don't you want kids sitting at the front? Doesn't it make it look like that they're really interested? Even if they really might not be? Lean forward. Huh? Right? Ask questions. Oh, that's a good one. Nod your head. Have you ever looked at someone and done this and they think you're really listening? Okay? Some of you are doing it now. All right. And then T, talk to the teacher or take notes. Slant, one of those things that we teach because students need to be able to do that when they get to college. And the last thing is time management. Every successful person manages his or her time, not the other way around.
Yeah, Barbara, I think we've only got a couple minutes, and we know that if people are going to remember you nicely, that you've got to let them out on time, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to have to go real quickly right here. How then does AVID impact students? And one of them is accountability. AVID has a very rigorous system of accountability, not only for that class, but for the school-wide program. But we want our kids to take responsibility for themselves. AVID really is all about the kids. It's not about the adults. So it affects academic behaviors, competency, peer support, mentoring, etc. across the school. We do want our students in rigorous classes. We have talked about that several times. But in order for them to do that, we've got to do our part. And that means sometimes we've got to change the belief system of a school. And some of you are probably in those situations right now. And then we have to hold our kids to high expectations. We've got to believe in them, set them in place, and then support them to do it and tell them, you can, I will help you get there. You cannot back off from that. The learning strategies. So we've been talking about several of these strategies here today that relate to their coursework. So we don't want to just teach a study skills class. This has got to be integrated with their content. How does it impact your campus? For those of you that have school-wide AVID, that you have got an AVID program that's been working really well, I would just bet, and we don't really have time to talk about it now, that you'd say, it has changed my school. It has changed the way we approach our responsibilities to kids and the way our students respond. And the power of high expectations. It is really remarkable if we believe that they can and that we support them to do it. Critical thinking. You've heard us say that term very many times. You've heard it throughout the day, period. It's changing the environment from teaching to learning. So it's not about us, it's about the kids. And then teaching those strategies. Do that one, or we don't have time? No, we don't have time. We got to go check. Okay, leave you with a cartoon. Zitz is my favorite. We want them in rigorous classes, but they don't have to be in 7. So, I know it's time, but if you have any questions, we will be here for a few minutes to answer your questions. And that's us, and feel free to contact us. This is the last slide in your handout. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.